Good morning. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Retirement Plan Design Advisory Committee. A quorum of the committee is present, and Ms. Rendon, would you kindly call the roll?
Chair Keith Brainerd.
Here.
Stephanie Leidy.
Here.
Josh McGee.
Here. Thank you. A quorum is indeed present. And I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend reading of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Discussion, corrections of the minutes as provided in your packet.
So moved. Move to suspend reading of the minutes and approval.
Oh, thank you. So it's been moved to suspend the reading. I would entertain a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Okay, committee members received a packet containing materials including a draft of the Principles of Retirement Plan Design that we reflect the conversation that we had at our last meeting last year, and also reflect the consensus of the committee, including taking some of the comments that we heard from members of the public. Staff refined these a little bit, cleaned them up, and we're here today to examine these principles further, refine them, and I think that there's a chance we might be able to recommend these principles to the full Pension Review Board. But we've got, I think, a little bit of work to do, and I'd like to open it up for discussion about the principles as they're presented in the packet today. I've got a couple of suggestions, if I could. First, included in the packet is preamble that I drafted that begins with whereas, and I would like to move inclusion of that preamble from whereas through retain employees up into the word therefore for inclusion as a preamble to our principles, and I have one minor correction in the preamble as submitted.
Yeah, I'm fine with the preamble. What's your correction?
Correction is at the end of the second bullet. Instead of protecting the environment, I would like it to say protecting the state's natural resources. So, hearing no objection, I'd like to move that the principles include the preamble as submitted and amended, and I would put that in the form of a motion, please. Is there a second?
Sorry, just reading through it again.
Oh, sure, take your time.
So I have one maybe suggestion. Not quite sure how I would word it for addition, but something along the lines of proper plan design provides economic stability on the part of the governmental entity providing the plan.
So would that be an additional bullet?
Additional bullet.
Would you like to take a moment and either articulate it in writing or orally so we can
Yeah.
consider it?
Give me a moment and I
Sure.
will pin it down.
Sure.
Should be managed in such a way. One other suggestion, not a big point, but the opening line, employing more than 1 in 8 working Texans. Of course, that will change over time. It may stay right around the 1 in 8. Maybe we shouldn't include lines that might have to be updated just because of demographic changes or state employment changes.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, Mr. McGee, do you suggest that we strike the employing more than 1 in 8 working Texans?
That's correct.
Leave it as a major employer?
That's correct. Shortening would be good. I'll take words away Miss Levy can add. Might I also suggest that we could probably strike in the 3rd bullet down the clause that begins with "and to keep."
I think I'd like to keep,
Sounds good.
and to keep.
How we doing?
Can I have a suggestion?
Sure. I want the economic sustainability. Yeah. Like, so I have same modification to that bullet point, and we should strive to provide economic stability to government entities sponsoring the plan.
I would say that I think we don't have to perfect the language here. We can get the idea out, and then we can have staff perfect it before it goes to the full board. We have something?
Yep, that's fine.
Would you like to read it?
So this could either be a modification of the last bullet point or an independent bullet point, with the general idea being that design and management of the retirement benefit, in addition to providing a benefit to the employees to attract and retain those employees. It should also be managed in such a way to provide economic stability to the governmental entity which is sponsoring the plan on a moving forward basis, so that governmental entities do not find themselves in place of certain governments today where they have significant funding gaps which affect their annual budget on a going forward basis.
Okay. I'm thinking that something like that should go into the principles themselves rather than the preamble. What do y'all think?
I'm comfortable putting it in the last bullet really talks about the goal of benefits. I think we could modify that last bullet in a simple way that says the design and management and prudent financial management of the retirement benefits provided to public employees can significantly affect the ability of employers to attract and retain employees, and the sponsoring government's ability to provide essential public service. Services, something like that. I think it would be good to also put in here that it's not the provision of benefits is important, but it's also very important that we not manage the benefits in such a way that it creates instability with the sponsoring government.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I just think that my thinking is that the shoulds should go down into the principles themselves, but what I heard you to say just now, which I think that you all have a consensus on, and I would suggest that, well, I'm indifferent as to whether it modify the existing bullet or we add a new bullet, but the spirit of it sounds something along the lines of that without using the word should, that the benefit should be sustainable for the employer and advances certain financial and economic goals of the employer. Could we leave it at that and ask staff to hammer out language rather than trying to hammer out the language here? Is that okay?
Yes.
Are you all comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Staff smarter
Thank
than
you.
us anyway.
Thank you. Anu, are you and your staff comfortable with
Yes.
putting that into the preamble?
We can surely do that.
Okay. I'd like to propose an amendment to the section that doesn't really have a title, but it's under initial draft language, which begins, the Pension Review Board recognizes that a retirement benefit is a critical element of an employee's compensation, and that benefits should be protected through sound plan design and adequate funding. I'd like to add to that, and that a retirement benefit is vital to attainment of the objectives of multiple public sector stakeholders, including employers, employees, and taxpayers. So it goes beyond just a critical element of an employee's compensation, and so it could say, Pension Review Board recognizes a retirement benefit is vital to attainment of the objectives of multiple public sector stakeholders, including employers, employees, and taxpayers. And that benefits should be protected through sound plan design and adequate funding. So in that first sentence, in lieu of focusing solely on employees' compensation, it's addressing all of the major stakeholders, namely employers, employees, and taxpayers.
So we've got a preamble. I'm just wanting to know exactly how this thing's going to flow.
Yep, that's a good question. And we can ask staff to ultimately work it out, but I think that the preamble that we just discussed could go following the paragraph of initial draft language that ends with sustainable retirement systems. And in lieu of the word whereas, the preamble could begin with the word because this is not a resolution. So we could get to the end of the first paragraph, sustainable retirement systems, and add the preamble. But I don't feel that strongly about it.
Got it. So there would be, the title of the document would be Principles of Retirement Plan Design. It would start with no heading for initial draft language, but it would start with the Pension Review Board recognizes, and then would flow immediately into the preamble after that paragraph. So we're inserting preamble here.
Yes,
And then it would continue as written.
I agree with that.
Can I ask one, kind of taking a step back, looking in, as we design these principles, some of what we have here on paper doesn't currently line up neatly with current state law. Does there have to be some kind of acknowledgement, or should there be some kind of acknowledgement as it relates to these principles? And I mean, just acknowledging that certain retirement systems, even if they wanted to, could not go out and implement this today?
Well, in my view, these principles are intended to affect policy. And my hope is that, well, also the audience of this is not just retirement systems, it's plan sponsors, such as the state, city councils, other entities that sponsor retirement plans. And my hope is that retirement plan representatives, plan sponsors, and so on will take this and read it and see whether or not it comports with what they have, with their policies and practices and laws, and make changes accordingly. So I don't see a need for this to comport with current law, and my hope is that once these are in place, that current law will be changed to comport with these.
I'm in agreement there. I mean, these are just suggestions. They can be, or guideposts for where policy should go.
This is a statement of how this board believes that things ought to be. I have a suggested revision for participation as presented. Currently it reads, participation in the employer-sponsored retirement plan should be mandatory. My suggested replacement is as follows. Public employers should offer a retirement benefit to their employees, and participation in the plan should be mandatory. So basically, we're adding the clause that public employers should offer a retirement benefit.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. The other thing that I had on that section is later on in the doc, we've got supplemental benefits. So item 2 under that is employers are encouraged to sponsor supplemental retirement plans. So we're making a distinction there between primary and supplemental. Might be worthwhile just saying primary in this opening sentence.
Are you suggesting something along the lines of public employers should offer a primary retirement benefit?
Raising the question as to whether we should add primary there, since we talk about supplementary, or something along those lines.
I guess the way I would read this, particularly in its totality, considering supplemental, is that one could easily infer that item 1 refers to a primary retirement benefit.
Fine with me.
Or do you want to kind of go middle of the road and provide that participation in the employer-sponsored primary retirement plan should be mandatory? That way you leave open that...
Yep.
That sounds great.
Okay.
I agree with that. Very good. I have a proposal for item 3, benefit eligibility. It currently reads, retirement plan vesting should be immediate over a short period. I find that saying be immediate is very prescriptive, and my suggestion would be to say retirement plan vesting should take place over a short period and should not exceed 5 years. Otherwise, we're saying should be immediate, and that seems very prescriptive and very specific, and I'm not sure that that's consistent with the spirit of this document. What we're looking for is basically is a vesting, reasonable vesting period, but to say immediate seems overly prescriptive and specific.
Can we just leave it at a reasonable vesting period? I have a lot of, and I understand that this is kind of principles of plan design. I have a lot of concern about immediate and short vesting periods, because while I see how it would be very beneficial to the employee, I think I just have concerns about the financial impact of that on the local government.
I think that in my experience, the financial impact of moving vesting around is relatively small, unless you're going to move it by a large number of years. Most of our plans right now, I think there are a number that are in the neighborhood of 5, and then a number that are in the neighborhood of 10. I think the 10 should come down, but a 5-year reduction for the ones that have 10 is not going to be a huge financial hit, because a lot of them have expected tenure on entry that's going to be over 10. So I just don't think there's, once you reach the 5, you're probably going to reach the 10, I guess is what, conditional on reaching 5.
Yeah, I think I was more concerned about the immediate.
Yeah, I was concerned about the immediate also, and the effect it can have on an employer.
I'm fine dropping immediate as long as we're willing to say the 5 years.
Yeah. 5 years has become a bit of a standard, and I believe 5 years is the max allowed by ERISA.
That's correct. It's the max allowed by ERISA.
How about retirement plan vesting should be brief and should not exceed 5 years?
Or should occur over a short period not to exceed 5 years?
That's great. You comfortable with that, Stephanie?
Yes, thank you.
Did you get that, Anu?
Yes.
Only other change that I have is item 8, plan governance and administration of assets. After a series of shoulds, we say must, and I'd like to replace the must with a should.
Where was this again?
This is 8.1. Retirement plans should have governance structures.
So I think my last question is in subsection 3 of that same section. And it just relates to the prudent person standards. And I'm just wondering whether or not we should change that to a prudent investor standard, since we're providing that assets should be professionally pooled or professionally managed. And I think to the extent that they are professionally managed, that can justify a higher standard.
That's fine with me.
Yep, I am comfortable with that. So we are striking person, adding investor.
Yes.
Wasn't long ago that was referred to as the prudent man standard.
We appreciate.
Yeah.
Other comments, suggested revisions? We can come back to possible changes if we have them. I'd like to see if anybody in the audience wants to comment. If so, please approach the podium. Welcome. Would you please identify yourself?
Yes, sir. David Stacy with the Midland Farms Relief and Retirement Fund. Related to comments, of course, I do the purpose of this board, State of Texas Pension Review Board, is to oversee governmental pension plans, none of which are subject to ERISA, and therefore any consideration or discussion about what ERISA requirements are largely irrelevant in this context. While they from time to time are used as points of reference or some sort of guideline, they are entirely not applicable in the public sector. I bring that up as a point because I do disagree in the motivation to accelerate the vesting period. I may be wrong, but it's my opinion that public sector plans serve a purpose to recruit and retain employees. One of the retention carrots is to make it less attractive to leave within a short period of time. One of the carrots to stay is to require an employee to stay for a longer period of time, not a shorter period of time, in order to retain that employee. And therefore, I do disagree with the urgency or the sense of urgency to have a short vesting period. I'm from a plan that has 10-year vesting, and I'm completely satisfied with that. I think it serves a very specific role that works well for my plan and my employer. And therefore, I've not heard a good argument although I've heard many arguments of how the employer and the plan gains from reducing their vesting period. That's all I'm going to beat that horse for now. Second piece, I'm just kind of tying into other discussions. This is on the whereas page, the preamble, and then kind of the conclusion. On the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth and sixth bullet points. Retirement benefit assets should be pooled and invested professionally in diversified portfolios based on a level of risk that is consistent with a long-term investment horizon. I'm just curious, what is the board's view of a long-term investment horizon?
Mr. Stacy, I normally don't interrupt public speakers, but I should say that I apologize, but that portion of the preamble is not under consideration.
Yes, sir. Okay.
We're only going up to the word therefore, not inclusive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Can I add one thing on the vesting? And this may not be a convincing argument to Mr. Stacy, and I appreciate your comments on vesting, and we may just differ on this point. So the reason to offer short vesting periods, I would say the primary goal of a retirement plan is to provide retirement benefits and security to workers. Recruit and retain is good, and it helps with that. But direct compensation is always going to be better. So the primary goal is for workers to be on the path to retirement security. And the reason to have shorter vesting periods is because you help people get to retirement security through shorter vesting periods. Longer vesting periods result in insecurity early in people's career. And I'll say the empirical evidence doesn't show that vesting is much of an incentive really at all. If vesting was much of an incentive, you would see clumping of people leaving right around vesting periods, and you just don't see it. So those are my two arguments.
I might add to that the retirement plan design is a series of finding the balance, and we're trying to balance a number of things here, including retaining, but also not sending workers off out of the job with nothing to show for it in the way of retirement assets. And retirement plan design can accommodate the employer's objective to keep people around in ways other than vesting. There's other ways to do that. You can use graduated multipliers and other mechanisms in order to create an incentive for people to stay in the job longer. But to me, part of the purpose, the primary purpose for having a shorter vesting period is to not send employees away with nothing to show for in terms of retirement assets for the time they spend on the job. Anyone else wish to approach the dais? We'd be interested in your comments. We've either intimidated you or you think we're doing very good work.
Are you trying to provoke a reaction?
Okay, seeing no one, are there other, do we want to go back to the document, other suggested revisions, changes?
So once we adopt the revised document, the motion should say that we will then allow public comments to the revised document, which will solicit public comments after the adoption. We can do that today if members are comfortable. And so before presenting it to the full board, we can solicit comments and have another advisory committee meeting to discuss those comments and then present the final draft to the board if necessary.
I will say that it might be useful to, whenever staff goes to put this together, so we're striking things and putting things in different places, just make sure that it actually makes sense whenever you read it, that it doesn't look like we drop the preamble in and it doesn't actually flow very well. So that may require a couple of edits here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's give staff wide latitude to make this a functional and readable document. And I think that what we've done here is try to articulate all of the all of the what's that we'd like to see, and we'll leave to staff the how to put it in there.
And I'll also say that the format of the principles should probably match our pension funding guidelines, just so we have kind of similar style.
I agree with that. It's a good suggestion. Also, once staff incorporates all of this and it becomes a full document, we'll send it out for public comment and comments in writing, and so you'll have another chance to, members of the public will have another chance to review and comment. If we get meaningful comments, then this committee will meet again to consider those comments, and then ultimately these principles and this principles document will be recommended to the full board and have discussion and a final vote by the full board. Mr. McGee.
Not to throw a wrench in here, but one thing we were completely silent on was drop plans, which is a substantial element. Now, I don't know that that is something I necessarily want to say something about, but it has been a problematic element of plan design for plans inside Texas.
If you want to say something about it, I would suggest that you think about what you might want to say, and I think this committee is probably going to meet again, and we could consider it.
Got it.
Any other comments? Last call for comments at this time. We've got a meeting of this advisory committee scheduled for April 24th, 2018. And if there's no further business and no objection, I would move adjournment.
What actions are we taking out of this? So staff is going to go back and make everything that we suggested actually make sense. And then what is the next step? Can we just roadmap that a little bit?
Sure, and staff can then provide a revised version to the members to make sure we have incorporated the changes that were discussed here today, and send that version out to the public soliciting comments, and come back at the April 24th meeting if we receive, like Mr. Brainerd said, meaningful comments, come back at the April 24th meeting, present those to the members again for further discussion and potential adoption of the revised principles to present to recommend to the full board at the June board meeting.
So the members of this committee will have a chance to see our consensus here in writing to confirm that it is what as we have requested, and once we're in agreement with that, it'll go out for the public's review and comment.
Great. In our next meeting, we'll be able to see those public comments.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. And the full PRB meeting begins at 10:30?
Good, yes.
25 minutes. Thank you.